What did the candidates say on the economy, and how did three economics professors react to this? My name's Matt Rosu. I'm a professor of economics. I spoke with Brian O'Rourke, professor at Robert Morris University, Jadrian Wooten, professor at Virginia Tech, as part of the Economics Happy Hour podcast. You can check out our full podcast in the link in the description, but for a short excerpt, let's hear the candidates briefly, then you'll hear our reaction.
Have actually a plan to build what I call an opportunity economy. Because here's the thing. We know that we have a shortage of homes and housing, and the cost of housing is too expensive for far too many people. We know that young families need support to raise their children, and I intend on extending a tax cut for those families of $6,000, which is the largest child tax credit that we have given in a long time, so that those young families can afford to buy a crib, buy a car seat, buy clothes for their children. My passion, one of them, is small businesses. My mother raised my sister and me, but there was a woman who helped raise us. We call her our second mother. She was a small business owner. I love our small businesses. My plan is to give a $50,000 tax deduction to startup small businesses, knowing they are part of the backbone of America's economy.
We're doing tariffs on other countries. Other countries are going to finally, after 75 years, pay us back for all that we've done for the world. And the tariff will be substantial in some cases. I took in billions and billions of dollars, as you know, from China. In fact, they never took the tariff off because there was so much money they can't. It would totally destroy everything that they've set out to do. They're taking in billions of dollars from China and other places. They've left the tariffs on. When I had it, I had tariffs, and yet I had no inflation. Look, we've had a terrible economy because inflation which is really known as a country buster. It breaks up countries. We have inflation like very few people have ever seen before, probably the worst in our nation's history. We were at 21%, but that's being generous because many things are 50, 60, 70, and 80% higher.
Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression. Donald Trump left us the worst public health.
That was a lot.
Wow.
That was enough to discuss right away. Run, spot, run.
Oh,
Right?
okay.
Was that what he said? Really? I mean, didn't he?
Yeah. Four
Was
sentences.
that something I don't know about, or I don't understand?
Uh,
I don't know. Okay, so all the first stuff. The bad. I was gonna say the good, the bad, the ugly, but I think I'm gonna change it to the bad, the ugly, and the even worse.
well, let me pop in. I think this is actually pretty easy. I think they asked what policies will bring down inflation. I think, Brian, correct me if I missed it, or Matt if I missed something. I think I heard three. Harris talked about a home buyer's credit.
Mm-hmm.
She talked about the child care tax credit, and Trump talked about tariffs. I think the rest of it was the sort of, are you better off than 4 years ago, fighting about inflation,
business.
unemployment, all the other stuff. I think I heard three policies, and
buying houses, the small business tax.
small
credit,
business tax. That's the other one. Okay.
Right.
and the Trump tariffs. What was the fourth one? Small business.
Trump talked about tariffs, and so
Trump talked about tariffs. Harris said a
child care tax credit.
Right. And he did throw something in there about jobs and immigration. Kind of, it sounded like the zero-sum game argument on jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't think any of those higher tariffs, a small business tax credit, childcare tax credit, or tax credit to buy houses, none of those are really going to lower prices, right? Like tax credit to buy houses are going to make houses more expensive.
Let me start at that one.
Right.
No. So I think the easiest one, the home buyer's tax credit, right? Like you're now going to make houses more expensive. If you subsidize people's purchase of homes and give them more money, homes are just going to be more expensive. That's not going to do it. The tariffs is not going to do it. That's an awful idea. That's going to raise prices on. So while the home buyer's credit will affect first-time home buyers, maybe other people largely might not be affected. Tariffs is going to affect everybody. That's going to be across the board part. I don't know enough about childcare tax credits or small business loans to know one way or the other. My guess is no. Like I would assume the small business tax credit is going to do the exact same thing where you're giving people money to start businesses, but that largely is those are the people that have very expensive. Those people have high costs of starting a business. That's not going to generate low
Yeah.
prices for consumers to buy things. Generally, those are really expensive products. So I just don't know enough about the tax credits, but I am the childcare credits. But I assume it's the same.
Yeah, the one thing that about those tax credits that jumped out to me was it sounded like so you get this tax credit for of $6,000 or whatever the
Mhm.
number is. So I don't I don't know where these people have been, but $6,000 doesn't go very far in terms of bringing costs or prices. And I'm sorry, when they say bringing costs down for the average consumer, it makes me bananas because they're talking about bringing prices down, not talking about costs. So
Yeah.
I just that is a
I
that's a
think,
peccadillo of mine. I hate when they
yeah.
use that terminology, but $6,000 for a newborn it'll get you some diapers. It might get you a car seat, and if you're using formula, that $6,000 goes away very, very, very quickly. And to your point, Jadrian, about the home credit, the house credit, you're throwing money at people, and it just allows them to spend
Yeah.
more. I'm not sure how this is going to help inflation
Well, yeah,
without increasing productivity. I mean, you have to have more stuff to buy.
that would increase the demand for housing, which
Mhm.
should increase the
Yeah.
pricing for housing and won't help with that. Won't help with the root cause.
So actually, I'm glad you said the word root cause because that's where I was going with this. Is all of these solution? Well, so to be fair, Trump's tariff solution is, I think, and trying to get at the root cause. I don't think it's the right way to do it. But sort of the tax credit idea is like, oh, you can't afford things. Let me give you more money, and like
Hmm.
that's just going to make things worse. The tariff argument will still make prices higher. This is sort of like textbook econ.
Yeah.
Applying a tax, even if you are claiming that another country is paying for it, that's not how that works. Um, everybody buying those things will pay for it. It's going to raise prices.
Yeah.
Um, all of them, I think, will raise prices. I guess the only caveat is the childcare tax credit, I believe, is currently at 4,000, and she wants to raise it to 6,000. So it's a fairly marginal increase
Hmm.
in that item. But again, it goes back to that's a subset of people, and I think what you'll see is you're gonna see rising prices around children. So things like daycare, things
Yeah.
like diapers and formula and food. I think you'll see maybe more localized prices. But I think it's the same thing with the housing credit, where
Yeah.
first-time home buyers are now going to pay more for their first home. And everybody who has a home is not going to really care. They're not going to be
Sure.
affected. The Matts and the Bryans, you're going to be fine. But I don't know. I'm not sure any of those policies make any impact on inflation.
No. There were two statements, one by each of them, I want to call out and give Pinocchio ratings here. And y'all can say Trump said bad inflation 21%. I believe 21% might be about approximately the cumulative inflation under the Biden administration, but it's not the year over year
Mhm.
rate. And
Hmm.
nobody goes by 4 year inflation rates.
Yeah.
So that's it's been the worst inflation in 40 some years.
Mhm.
Um and then it gets back to the point, like, why do you need to overstate it? It was
Yeah.
terrible inflation. Like,
Right.
you
Mhm.
didn't
And
need
it's
to
fine to say
overstate.
4 decades, right? Like you can say
Yeah,
you could be honest and say it's
yeah,
the worst of 4 decades. It's not the worst that living people have seen.
No.
He personally has seen
you've seen
much
you've seen
higher
worse.
inflation rates.
Yep.
Definitely not 80%.
Yeah, so that was 21%. I think that is, I mean, you could say that if he was saying since the beginning of the Biden
Mhm.
presidency, yeah, but and then on the Harris side, left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression. That is categorically false.
Hmm.
The unemployment rate might have been worst since the Great Depression, I think, at the peak of COVID, but it was about 6.5% or
Mhm.
so when Harris took office. So that's a false statement. When COVID hit, it was there, but you shut down the economy.
Mhm.
That's that To try to blame that one on Trump is really stretching. But those are the two Pinocchios I saw, one on
Mm.
each side. I don't know if
I
I hear
caught
any
one
thoughts.
more. There was a comment about there being fewer workers than before the pandemic, that we still haven't fully rebounded in terms of employment. And I was Googling while we were checking that. We do have 3 million more workers. The civilian labor force has grown by 3 million people since 2019. Could we have more? Yes, absolutely, because we shut down the economy. But we definitely don't have fewer people working today than we did in 2019. So I
Yep.
scribbled that one down.
Yeah. Any more comments before we move forward to the next clip?
I'll be interested to see how much they come back to the idea of deficits. So they both, well, Harris in particular referenced how Trump's policies are going to explode the deficit. And really, there's no indication that either one of these candidates has any interest whatsoever in managing the deficit. There's,
Correct.
it's a lot of spend, and that's what you hear in presidential elections is what I'm going to do for you, and that means that means spending more money. But neither one of these two individuals have any interest in balancing the budget or trying to get that under control.
No.
I am hopeful, and I don't think it's going to change, but I really wish we would drop this. Are you better off than 4 years ago? In this particular cycle, I understand that phrasing and what it means politically, but 4 years ago was fall 2020.
Yeah,
No, that was not a better time for the country. And across all measures, right? Matt, exactly what you said, right? Then we had the worst unemployment that we've seen in a long time, right? People were dying regularly. So I guess this feels like the wrong election to use the "Are you better off than you were 4 years ago?" Because we are.
Like, it's weird, but politically though, I think I think people are thinking back to pre-COVID. But
I think if he said, are you better off than before COVID? Then I think you have a different story. But 4 years ago was pretty bad.
Okay. Do either one of you have any thoughts on Harris's line about the creating an opportunity economy? What is that? And how do these policies sort of create more opportunity? I know I was just talking to a guy who is trying to hire hundreds of people in the grocery store industry in the Pacific Northwest, and he cannot find people to work in those jobs. It seems the idea of an opportunity economy, that one just stumps me a little bit.
Thanks for watching. As a reminder, you could check out our reaction to other parts of the debate by clicking the link in the description. Until then, see you in the next video.